Father and daughter are lying down in sleeping bags inside a tent. Caleb asks if Rag wants to hear a story. Rag replies uninterestedly. They turn off the light and go to bed. The next day, Caleb goes out of the tent and starts a fire in the woods. He gathers some water, washes his clothes, and gathers some food. Rag is lying inside the tent when her father arrives to pick her up. They hike through the forest while her father teaches her spelling and life lesson about morals and ethics. They come back to their camping site where they find a man snooping around their tent. Caleb tells her to hide while he confronts the stranger, but a few moments later she shows herself. The stranger gets curious about her, and after a few questions, he leaves. Caleb feels cautious and hurriedly tells Rag to pack her things up. Rag asks him why he lied to the stranger and why they are suddenly leaving. They start to hike northwest of the forest while the father explains himself. Rag seems uninterested and speaks to him plainly. Night falls and they set up camp. The two of them are lying in their sleeping bags and talking about the man they encountered earlier. Rag wants to know other people, but her father tells her that they need to be cautious of other people. He assures her how much he loves her. Later that night, a man in the forest watches their tent behind the trees. He flashes a light in their campsite to check on them. The next morning, Rag is not feeling well. She throws up as her father assists her. He takes some water from the river and then added medicine to it for Rag to drink. Rag drinks it and lies down in her sleeping bag. She asks her father if she is going to pass away, and he assures her that she always gets better. She then asks him whether she has the plague, and he tells her that she is immune. Caleb massages her to sleep, and he remembers his wife. The scene shifts to a flashback. They were in the kitchen, getting worked up with Rag's condition. Caleb told his wife that Rag did not have any symptoms. They got into an argument because the wife thought that she had the plague and was already giving up. When Rag gets better, they continue hiking through the forest. They reached a clearing and see a two-story house. Caleb looks around to see if anyone is in the area. When he sees that no one is around, they go to the house to check it out. The house is apparently empty. Caleb goes up to the second floor while Rag waits on the stairs. After a few moments, her father goes down to tell her that it is all clear. Rag explores the room upstairs while her father looks around the first floor. Ran is delighted to find the bedrooms have beds. She goes down to tell her father, and he happily shows her that there is still running water in the faucet. Rag says that it is the best place they have seen for a while, and asks him if they can stay. The father does not agree with the idea, saying that other people will eventually discover the place, and it is not safe. After an argument, Rag finally convinces her father to stay, but just for a few days. Rag plays with the toys in the bedroom upstairs while her father sets up defenses in the house. She goes on to explore the attic and finds newspapers about the plague that almost wiped up the female population. The next day, Caleb looks for Rag to show her the safe spot he made. He finds her delightedly trying on girls' clothes. He is not happy about it and tells her to take it off immediately. Rag does what she is told and follows her father outside. When her father sees her still wearing a sparkling jacket, he angrily scolds her. They reach the hiding spot and go through the information they need to use the hiding spot efficiently while Rag tests the place. Caleb creates hiding spots, secret entrances, and emergency exits inside the house. He breaks a wall and places a poster in front of it. He unhinged a door and moves a wardrobe in front of it. Meanwhile, Rag explores an old barn near the house, and she is surprised by something. The father hears the sound of a whistle coming from the outside of the house. He hurriedly runs out to meet Rag and hugs her tightly. Caleb insects the barn and finds a corpse of a mother and child. Night falls, and the father plays the guitar in the living room and remembers his past life with his wife. He goes to the bedroom to stay with Rag. She is curious about the corpses in the barn. She asks her father if that is what will happen to them. He assures her that will not happen to them and that they still have a long life ahead of them. She then asks him why they need to have red alerts and be cautious all the time. He explains that even if there are not a lot of people who get sick from the plague anymore, it is still not safe out there. Rag wonders when will everything be normal again, and her father answers that everything is balanced like there are more women again. The next morning, Rag and her father prepare to go to the nearby town. Rag did not want to go at first, but her father was able to convince her. The town is bustling with people, all men. They buy some food before going to the town's library. Caleb looks at parenting books, while Rag reads some books. After a while, they start their way back to the house they are staying in. Rag shows her father a news article she took from the library, and her father tells her that news articles can lie. They eat dinner at home while talking about the man they talked with back in town. The man half-jokingly said that female babies were being created in China's laboratories. Caleb explains how children are really made and how a woman gets pregnant. Rag tells him that she already knows something about it from the books she read. Her father is a little surprised, but he continues awkwardly explaining more about pregnancy. He explains that her body will go through changes in puberty and that she will have menstruation. Rag is silent after their talk. Caleb makes sure the house is secure and goes to the bedroom to prepare to sleep. Rag asks him about her mother. She does not know or remember her. He tells her how much her mom loved her and how great of a person she was. Ran enjoys listening to his stories about her mother until she falls asleep. Caleb watches her sleep and remembers his wife. His wife was on her deathbed. She told him to tell Rag everything about her, and that she loved her and that she was sorry that she could not be a mother to her. Later that night, Caleb is reading the book about parenting that he got from the library. He hears a noise outside, so he looks out from the window, but he sees that no one is there. The next morning, he is having a coffee while reading a newspaper when suddenly, he sees two men coming towards the house. He hurriedly runs to Rag. He hides her in a closet upstairs and tells her not to come out until he says so. He hears the men knocking downstairs. He asks them what they want, and they say that they need some help and if they can stay for a while. The father tells them that he cannot help them. Then the men start asking about a child. He tells them that they are mistaken. The man does not reply and goes to the back door to get inside. He immediately goes upstairs to get Rag. They use the hidden exits he created to get out of the house. They run as fast as they can to the hiding spot to get their supplies, and then bolts toward the forest. They follow a train until they reach a church. They settle in the church for the night. Rag asks her father about the men, and he tells her that they were looking for someone. She knows that they wanted to take her because she is a girl. Her father tells her that he will not let anyone take her. She is worried about her father and that someone might hurt him. He assures her that whatever happens, he will always be with her. She does not know what will happen to her if that happens. Her father tells her that she needs to survive and listen to her inner voice. Rag is scared to be alone, so her father reassures her that he will not let anyone hurt him. The next morning, they walk to the town and stay in a shed when it rains. Rag asks her father where they are going, and he say that they will go to a top of a mountain, far from everyone else. It will take them a long time to get there, and at the same time, winter is coming, so they need to get there before it gets too cold. They travel by train and then hitch a ride from a young man. It is already winter, they are already shivering from the cold. The young man chats with Caleb for a while. He mentions a compound with supplies and that there are females, and he tells them that he brings supplies to that place. The father sees this young man as a good person. He tricks him to stop the car and tells him that he will be taking it. He feels bad for leaving him on the road, but he has no other choice. Rag asks him why they left the man, but her father just says the young man will be okay. They slept in the car that night, and they continue to travel the next day until they reach the mountain. By this time, the snow is already heavy. They continue on foot to reach the top of the mountain where a lone house is standing. The father knocks at the door and asks if they can get some warmth. An old man named Tom lets them in and introduces two other men as Calvin and Leonard. He introduces them as Caleb and Alex as he is shivering from the cold. The two of them settle by the fire. Caleb tells the old man that it was his grandparents' house when he was a child. Tom tells him that it was abandoned when they found it, and they are living in it for 4 years. He tells them that they can help them if they are going somewhere else, but they are welcome to stay the night. Rag and Caleb go to a bedroom the men lend them. She immediately asks him whether they have a safe spot. He honestly says that they do not yet. They discuss an escape plan and route in case of an emergency. Caleb goes out of the room to listen to the men. He finds them reading the Bible together. Seeing that they do not seem suspicious, he goes back upstairs. The next morning, Caleb wakes Rag up early and they leave the house quietly to find a safe spot. They walk through the forest and find a shed. Rag hides her supplies as her father tests her for their procedures and if she remembers how they get there. They leave the shed and make their way back to the house. The old men offer them a meal and some change clothes, which they gratefully accept. After breakfast, Rag goes out to play with Tom in the snow. Tom teaches her about farm animals and shows her how to clean a gun. Caleb watches over her and tells her to be cautious all the time. Tom confronts Caleb. He knows that the kid is a girl. He is making sure that Rag is really Caleb's daughter because he is worried about the girl. Caleb tells him that they could leave, but Tom tells him about his family who died from the plague. He assures Caleb that his intentions are good and all for the grace of God. Caleb tearfully admits that Rag is his daughter. He shows him their family picture and tells him about his family. The 5 of them eat dinner together. Caleb and Tom are in the living room talking about the so-called safe places for women. Caleb is not fond of that idea and is skeptical about it. He wants Rag to survive. Tom thinks that the world they are in is not an ideal place for a child to grow. He advises Caleb to let God's plan happen. Rag calls Caleb from upstairs and goes to her. They lay in bed and talk about Goldie from the story Caleb told her. Rag tells him an alternate story that it was really Goldie who saved the day. Caleb tells her about the time she was still in her mother's womb. Caleb and his wife went to the doctor for a checkup and to get an ultrasound. The doctor asked them if they want to know the baby's gender. Caleb wanted to know, but his wife did not, so the doctor gave them an envelope containing the baby's gender if they changed their mind. Caleb was eager to know her gender so they can prepare baby stuff. He sneaked at night to look at the envelope and found out that it was a girl. He went to sleep and never told his wife. Caleb tells her that he loves her so much and kisses her forehead. He turns the light off and uses a flashlight to look at a piece of paper. The next morning, Caleb is changing his clothes when he sees 3 men through the window walking to the house. He hurriedly tells Tom, but he closes the door on him. He wakes up Rag and tells her it's a red alert. They quietly go down the hall and hear Calvin and Leonard talking to the strangers. When the strangers seem to knock down the old men, Rag and Caleb go back to their room and barricade the door. Caleb opens the window so it will seem that they went out that way. He lifts Rag up to the attic and follows her to hide there. Caleb tells her their plan to go out the window and run to the safe spot in the forest. He opens up the window and lowers Rag to the porch, but he hesitates when he sees that they are too high up. Rag convinces him to let her go, so he does. The stranger appears in the attic, but he sees that no one is there. He checks the open window, but Caleb suddenly jumps him. They fight one another, and in the end, Caleb can eliminate him. He hurriedly goes down the attic entrance, but another man is waiting for him and pulls him down. The man chokes Caleb, but he is able to fight back and kill the man. He continues his way downstairs and finds Tom and the other old men unconscious. He opens the front door and sees another stranger. The stranger quickly throws his body onto Caleb, and they fight on the living room floor. Caleb jumps on his back and chokes him. The stranger fights him back and is able to choke him until he stops fighting. Suddenly, the stranger gets shot in the back. Rag went back to the house. She remains silent, waiting for her father to move. Caleb weakly gets up and hugs her tightly. The two of them go back to the safe spot in the forest. Rag sees that the bullet penetrated her father, so she takes out the bullet from his wound. Caleb tells her that he just needs to rest. He remembers his wife on her deathbed. Caleb was crying hard. His wife assured her that he is going to be fine. He needs to keep their daughter close and they will have each other. Caleb wakes up crying. He looks around and sees that Rag is not in a safe place. He goes outside to look for her, but she is nowhere to be seen. He yells her name repeatedly until he sees her dragging something behind her. He walks to her and hugs her tightly. Rag dresses her father's wounds back in a safe place. She starts a fire while Caleb tells her about a safe place where it is warm and there are good people. Rag listens to him quietly. He starts crying and she goes to him and hugs him. She tells him that it is a lot of adventure.